We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another awesome episode of the Supernatural Hour. I'm Tim.
I'm Raven.
I'm Chad.
And with us this week, we have a very special person. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
I'm a special person?
Yes.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeff here, Lurch.
Let's jump right into our topic this week. And we're going to be talking about the Viscella Ax Murder house. This is a house that is located in Viscella, Iowa.
The southwestern part of the state.
Yeah.
If you've never seen this house before, it just is a cute little white picket, two-story, turn of the century. I mean, it looks like a dollhouse. It's a cute little house.
So before we get too much into this, I did want to mention real quick at the beginning of this. I was actually watching an episode of Ghost Adventures where they were at the Viscella Ax Murder house about a month ago. And I was over at Peach's house. And she had gone to get ready for bed and came back in, and I was watching it, and she's like, "Oh, what's this?" And I told her, like, "Oh, it's this house." Or no, I think I told her about it before. I can't remember. I told her about it. I showed her a picture of it, and she's like, "What is this?" And she started telling me all the emotions that she was feeling from this picture from the house. And she was telling me that there was a lot of sadness and anger, and like I said, she knew nothing about this house. She'd never even heard of it. And she's like, there was murders that happened there. And she's like, something to do with an axe. And I just started laughing. And she's like, cool. What? I'm like, this is called the Viscella Ax Murder house. There was several people there murdered with an axe. And she got all this just by looking at the picture. Like I said, she never even heard of it. I think that's what got me to show her the episode of The Ghost Adventurers.
That's awesome.
I would love to watch some paranormal TV shows with her, because we know that she can see things both in photographs and in video that, you know, we can't see. She's a medium. She can see spirits and see entities in real life as if I'm talking to you right now. But that's got to be really kind of, I don't know if it'd be unnerving or exciting to be able to see those things. I'm sure she probably gets so tired of it.
She is very tired of it. She's actually seriously considering finding a way to kind of just temporarily shut off her gifts and just be a normal person for a while.
I was just going to say, does she still have that chair?
She does have a magical chair? She does have the magic chair. She wants to figure out how to do that on a more permanent basis without the chair, but like something that she could eventually turn back on if she wanted. So she's trying to figure out how to find that light switch, just because when you have gifts like that, it can be very overwhelming and very draining on an individual when you're constantly seeing people's auras and their energy, and you know, you're always seeing spirits, and spirits can tell that you can see them, so they want to talk to you, and it's just, she sometimes feels like she doesn't have a normal private life because this is always going on for her 24/7.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Constant invasion of privacy and not being able to do anything without other things watching you and wanting to bug you, and yeah, that would get very tiring very quickly.
I mean, it's a lot like kids.
Simple tasks like going to the grocery store can be very tiresome for her, just because there might be a random spirit that's just like, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm shopping, leave me alone, you know. So yeah, I just thought it was cool. I just wanted to mention that she was able to give me information about this house and how the people actually died in the house without actually knowing anything about it, just by seeing a picture of the house.
That's crazy.
So I know this town, Viscella, at the time, only had about 2,500 people in it. It wasn't a very big town, but it was very prosperous as well.
And it was in the early 20s, wasn't it?
1912, actually.
1912.
So this actually happened 108 years ago. And one of the things about this and why we're talking about this is, I mean, there is paranormal involved in this. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But this happened 108 years ago, and they still have no idea who did it, why they did it, or how. I mean, they know how, what the weapon was used, but how they got away with it, and you know, no one caught them.
It was a very violent crime. It was a family of 6 mother and a father and their 4 children. Then they also had 2 children that were sleeping over that night, and it was just a heinous crime. They had, I think, about a half dozen suspects, but one of them was tried twice without being found guilty. One of them was acquitted, and they believe that the real murderer was never caught. That there was a book that was written about it just a few years ago, and during the research, the father and daughter team that were writing the book, they came up with a theory that it was a certain person. I want to say his last name was Mueller or Miller, German descendant, and he was known for possibly doing other murders. So it was a serial crime, and they never found him.
You know what I think is the most sad is, you said it was a mother and father and their 4 children, 6 children. And then they had actually been at a church function, and the 2 friends told the family friend, they said, "Can we come home with you, because we are too scared to walk home?" And I thought, the whole thing is sad, but it's like, if you had just not been scared, and I get it, kids get scared, so I'm not blaming them in any way, but it's like, if they had just gone home, they wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have been there.
They wouldn't have been slaughtered.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you went to the scariest place you could have gone that night. But they had no way of knowing. I'm not blaming them, but it's just, to me, it's extra sad.
One of the oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Tim. One of the girls that was sleeping over that night, I forget her name. She was 12 years old, and everyone was killed in basically the same way. But this 12-year-old, it's suspected that she woke up because she had defensive wounds on her arm, but then she was also found spread crosswise across the bed, and her underwear had been removed and her dress had been hiked up. So not only did this perpetrator kill an entire family with an axe, but then he also sexually molested a 12-year-old girl. And
is she the one that they said, because everyone was just kind of how they were, but she was the one that was kind of posed?
She was the one that was kind of posed, yeah. The father, he was killed with the sharpened edge of the axe, and everyone else was used with the blunt end, the backside of the axe, blunt trauma to the head. And it's suspected all of them were sleeping. He killed the mother and father first, and then he went and killed all the kids. But this 12-year-old girl, they suspect that she was the last one to be killed, and she was molested first before her life was taken.
So the family members, the people that we have, the father, his name was Josiah Moore. His wife was Sarah. There are 4 children. You had the oldest was Herman. He was 11 years old at the time of his death. Then you had Catherine, who was 10 years old. And then you had Boyd and Paul, who were 7 and 5. And then the sisters that stayed over, the friends, they were friends of Catherine. Their names were Lena Stillinger and Ina May Stillinger. Now, Lena was the 12-year-old. Lena was the one that was positioned differently, the one that you said that they thought that she might have actually woken up during the attacks. Now, the coroners and whatnot had actually done an examination, and they determined that she wasn't sexually molested. But I would say the fact that her dress was kind of pulled up in her underwear or across the room, chances are she probably was. So she was 12, and the younger sister was 7. And like Deanne said, they were all coming home from a church function. They were afraid to walk home, so their friend Catherine was just like, "Why don't you just spend the night with us?" And some of the weird things that you notice about what this happened is, they were all bludgeoned to death, except for the father. And from what I've read and understand is, after he ended up killing everybody, he went back and took the axe and just hacked away at the faces of the mother and the father.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard in what I read and researched and listened to, the father was the most attacked, the most deformed. He was the one that was the most unrecognizable. And if I remember right, they said that the guy that did it swung the axe so hard that there were actually axe marks in the ceiling where the axe had...
Blood splatters.
No, blood splatters, but
there was pieces of dust and stuff from where the axe had hit the ceiling on the beds. That's what helped them determine that the damage to the roof or in the ceiling was done during the murders, because there was actually like sawdust or whatever from the ceiling on the beds. And I mean, it makes sense because if he's using the blunt end, the sharp end is going to be hitting the ceiling. So he's literally cutting, and he was just wildly swinging. It wasn't like a calculated attack. He just went in and just started randomly swinging and hitting people in the heads. And there's some theories as to why none of the family woke up except for maybe the little girl. There's one of the theories is that he actually put some sort of sedative or drugged their food when they came home, and that kind of put them all to sleep. But some of the other theories is because he hit them so hard the first time with that blunt of the axe that it just instantly killed them. And obviously, like, if you're instantly dead, you're not going to wake up when you're being attacked. One of the other strange things that I read was they found next to one of the bodies, or next to the axe, because he just left the axe sitting propped up on the wall, they found a 4-pound slab of bacon. There's two theories as to why. One is that he was going to steal the bacon and take it for food. The other theory that I heard was that he was using it as a makeshift female private parts and was doing inappropriate stuff with it, although no evidence of bodily fluids or hair was found on the bacon. So they're not exactly sure why that bacon was there, but those are some of the theories.
Right, and one of the things that I heard was they found food on the table, but just one plate of food. So they don't know if he had made a meal for himself while he was waiting for them to get home, or when they found the axe, they said it was partially cleaned off. And they found a pot of water, of bloody water. So it's like, did he start to clean it off and then think, screw it, and then sat down and made a meal? They're not sure when that meal happened or why he only partially cleaned the axe off, and why there was a bloody bowl of water. I think they called it a pan of water. But there's a lot of really weird things going on that they just never have put together.
All of those things just point at a deep psychosis, a deep mental trouble. Because I mean, it's one thing to kill someone in a passion, heat of the moment, rage to take someone's life. But this was almost plotted. It was something where he snuck into their house, perhaps in the middle of the night, killed an entire family, not just the adults, but also children. And the youngest, I think, was 5. That's something that's very cold-blooded to not just kill adults, but to kill children as well. There's suspicions of molestation as well for prepubescent girl, and then what you said, Tim, with like the bacon, where he was maybe using that for inappropriate things as well. I mean, all these things just point at this deep psychosis of mental health.
Yeah.
And there's so many terrible things. I mean, the way they were found, it's in the early 1900s. Back then, it's farmland. In that part of the area, it's probably still farmland, and people would get up early and they'd come out and do their chores. Well, the neighbor woman noticed that they weren't up and about
at 7 a.m. Well, she got suspicious because at 7 a.m.
Right.
they weren't up. Yeah, they weren't up. It's like, does the day start at 7?
Yeah, 5 a.m. for them. They noticed that no one was up. And so she went and let the chickens out, and then it was 7 a.m., like you said. She's like, well, they're not outside doing their normal daily chores.
That's just a sign of the times, how things have changed. You'd get up at sunrise, you go to bed at dusk, at sunset, and you'd sleep, 8 hours.
Because I wake up at 7, and I'm like, oh, good, I can sleep for like another hour.
Yeah. But I guess 7 a.m. back then was sleeping in and being lazy. Well, especially if you live on a farm, you got cows and livestock to tend to, you got chickens to let out and gather vegetables and fruits and whatnot.
So I think she tried the doors and it was locked, and she was able to get a hold of one of the parents' brothers. The dad's brother?
The dad's brother, I think his name was, I want to say Roger Moore, but that's a dude that was in...
he was
James
Bond. So, they got a hold of one of his brothers, and he came over and checked the doors. All the doors were locked from the inside, and... Ross Moore, thank you.
Josiah Moore's brother.
So yeah, I guess he had a spare key, and he used it to let himself in. I mean, he pounded and banged on the doors and windows.
And I thought, wouldn't that just be, as a brother, the most horrific thing to walk into? I mean, I don't know that you can recover from that.
Seeing your,
I guess you'd have
brother
to,
and your brother or sister-in-law and the entire family, your nieces and nephews slaughtered violently, blood everywhere. I mean, we're talking violent crime.
Now, tell me if I'm getting a couple things mixed up, because this might be something else. But did they find two smoked cigarettes upstairs in the attic? Or
Yes,
is
they
that
did.
Something different. Okay.
Nope, they did. So that they determined because of that, the person was actually in the house waiting for them to come
Yeah.
home. So I mean, this is someone that, like Lurch said, is very mentally disturbed. The fact that he was able to stay patient for who knows how long.
Plotted and planned.
Yeah, see, my gut feel with everything is I think it was definitely planned. You know why? I don't know. But it to me everything points to it wasn't just a random hey.
So after discovering the bodies, the brother, I believe, went to the local hardware store and had them phone the sheriff to let him know what went on. And I believe the sheriff came over, and somehow word got out. And news of the murders spread like wildfire. Like the 911 operators, even like they opened the circuits or whatever it was called back then. They just opened it up and they basically put out like an all points bulletin.
Switchboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
They let everybody know in the town, like, hey, this family was murdered. And it had kind of a negative effect on.
Well, because people went there and walked through the house and destroyed evidence, and just by being there, just contaminating the crime scene.
And it's not, I mean, in 1912, they didn't have the wherewithal to really look for evidence and
Well, they got
DNA and.
I mean, they didn't have DNA testing 108 years ago.
I know, weird.
That's so weird.
But even if they had,
There would have been lots of extra DNA of all the people that got there before the sheriff.
and I'm just thinking, I don't know, it's a sign of the times, but if I just don't know that I would go traipsing through a house to have a good look-see.
Well, if that happened now, you wouldn't have to because it would be on Facebook within 10 minutes.
Sure.
And even now, within the last 20, 30 years, I've watched some unsolved crime shows recently on Netflix. It's just one of those cold case TV shows. And, there was a crime that was committed in 1984 and they couldn't solve it because there was DNA testing that they didn't have the means to do what we can do now. So, eventually the crime was solved. But, 100 years ago, all these things were just fantasy. You had no concept of anything, remotely possible like this that we can do now with taking a blood sample and linking it up with another person. They had no idea.
Well, and you would never, let's keep this hair just in case we can trace it. They wouldn't have even thought of that.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, so with everyone traipsing through, they had a hard time, like you all said, collecting evidence. They would get people out of the house through, there's the front door and the back door, and they would finally get people out of the house through one door, and more people would show up through the other door, and it was a literal shit show just because, like, the entire town came and showed up, and then...
It's a bunch of rubberneckers just wanting to see the scene.
Well, then the panic set in. So everyone was buying locks for their doors and buying up all the firearms and ammunition because, well, this can happen out in their peaceful little town. And one of the things I did read, Viscella, they thought meant peaceful view or peaceful place or something like that. But it is also possible that it was named after the Native American word Wiliska, which means evil spirit.
Hell, that's a little different from peaceful view.
Yeah, it's kind of on opposite ends, but if that in case was what it was named after, if they knew that, you kind of have to wonder if that town would have existed or been thriving the way it was.
If it was cursed before it even started.
Yeah. So, it could have been something that you had some individual that might have been manipulated by an outside entity. And that's just pure speculation at this point because, like I said, nobody knows who did it or why they did it. But
there were several other murders that happened within the same time frame of a few years and a few months. And all of them, all of these same murders that had kind of the same
MO.
The same kind of trademark of killing with an axe. They were all within walking distance of a train. So it would have been very easy for a vagrant to hop off a train, just kind of scout things out for a little bit, find a house that was close by, and do what it needed to kind of satisfy that need, that itch for killing someone, and then just easily just go back and hop back on the train again and disappear without a trace.
it wasn't that the Continental Railroad or whatever it was at the time. Like they were all near
Yeah.
that, and a lot of them had a lot of similarities. Like one of the things they found in this particular house is they had gone through and ransacked all the dressers and stuff and took all their clothing and covered up all the windows, the mirrors, like
Locked the doors
everything.
when they left.
Right, and one thing is that, this isn't too far removed from the Victorian era, and it was customary to cover mirrors at the time, if someone died, because people would think, and how did this go? If evil spirits could see them doing bad things, it would amplify it. I believe is how that went. And so the guy kind of, and I could have that a little wrong, but so it almost tells me that whoever did it knew that it wasn't a good thing, but he did it anyway. So I thought that the covering of the mirrors and the windows was very telling.
There were a lot of suspects that they had. The one that kind of struck me as most interesting was Andrew Sawyer. He was a vagrant. He was a stranger that was new to Villisca. He went to a bridge foreman for the Burlington Railroad Company, and he approached the crew at around 6 a.m. on the morning of the murders, that the murders were discovered. Sawyer, he was clean-shaven, he was wearing a brown suit, his shoes were covered in mud, and his pants were wet nearly to the knees. He asked for employment and was given a job on the spot. So later it was testified by the foreman that Sawyer one day purchased a newspaper. He went off by himself to read it. The newspaper carried a front-page account of the Villisca murders, and he was really interested in, according to the account from the foreman. The crew also complained that Sawyer slept with his clothes on. He was anxious to be by himself. He was uneasy, and he slept with his axe next to him. He often talked to the Villisca murders and whether or not a killer had been apprehended. One day, it was testified that the foreman, Dyer was his last name, walked up behind Sawyer, who was rubbing his head with both hands, and suddenly jumped up and said to himself, "I'll cut off your goddamn heads. Cut your goddamn heads off." Sorry, my language. At the same time, he made striking motions with the axe and began hitting the piles in front of him. So, I mean, this guy showed signs of mental illness, but he was just one of several alleged perpetrators. And like I said, there was a book that was written, and he wasn't even one of the suspects when they did the research. They found evidence for someone that was completely forgotten, never found at the time. But I thought, reading about the actual incident itself, Sawyer was one of those guys that kind of stood out as being really unusual and acting strange for the circumstance.
That sounds strange for any circumstance.
Well, one of the other suspects was, I believe he was a state senator at the time. His name was Frank Jones. And I guess Josiah and Frank had actually worked together for several years before Josiah had opened up his own implement company in 1908. And according to Villisca residents, Jones was extremely upset that Moore had left the company and started his own, and was basically doing better financially.
Yeah,
than he
took
was.
away business.
Pretty much, yeah. And so one of the thoughts is that because this guy was, I mean, they got to the point where they wouldn't even talk to each other when they saw each other in public. I mean, they used to be good friends. They were employees, or he worked for him. Josiah worked for him, and they just kind of complete 180, and they don't even talk to each other. And so one of the theories is that Frank actually committed the murders out of jealousy, which if that was the case, it would explain why Josiah was the first one killed and he was the most mutilated.
Yeah.
Now, there is another suspect. His name is William Blackie Mansfield.
I was just about to get to that too. Yeah.
And I'll just mention real quick that it's rumored that Frank Jones actually paid Blackie to commit the murders. But do you want to jump more into that?
Oh, I was just going to say that, is that, that Jones was a suspect, but also that there's a theory that he hired Mansfield to murder the Moore family. It's believed that Mansfield was a serial killer because he murdered his wife. He murdered his infant child and his parents-in-law with an axe 2 years before the Villisca crimes. He's believed to have committed axe murders in other states, Paola, Kansas, 4 days before the Viscella crime. So it would have been easy for this man to hop on a train, go from one site to another, and yeah. But he was released. They found him acquitted of the crime when his alibi checked out.
Right, so another one was a fellow by the name of George Kelly, and he was a reverend, and I believe that he was actually at the church with the family, at least for part of the time. It turns out he was a sexual deviant. It didn't really go into a whole lot of detail there. And he actually confessed of the crime, and they took him in, but later he recanted and said, no, I didn't do it. So
I think it might have been a cry for attention. He might have had some mental illness as well, but I think they checked out his alibi and it didn't quite work out as well. But I don't know. I get suspicious of people that do that claim to have done something and then they change their story and then they say, it wasn't really me. I think there's a lot of disturbed people that want that attention and they aren't the actual murderers, and I just understand what the motive is behind stuff like that. But then I'm also not mentally ill, so that might be a reason why.
That might be a good thing.
I'll take that as being a good thing. I mentioned also that there is a book that was written. It was called The Man from the Train, written by Bill James and his daughter Rachel McCarthy James, in which they discussed the Viscella murders as part of a much larger series of murders that were all committed by a single serial killer. They concluded that the murder was a man by the name of Paul Miller, who was a German immigrant possibly. He was the subject of a unsuccessful manhunt as the sole suspect in the 1897 murder of a family in West Brookfield, Massachusetts. They had hired him as a farmhand, and he slaughtered the family as well. James stated in his research, in an attempt to solve the Viscella murders, and with his daughter, they found archival newspaper stories detailing dozens of families murdered under similar circumstances all across the U.S. The Jameses thus believed that Mueller was guilty of the Viscella murders as part of a killing spree that lasted over a decade, killing at least 59 people in 14 separate incidents, including Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Paola, Kansas crimes. So yeah, this killer was never found, and I'm sure he's dead now.
Probably.
Yeah.
So we have 8 people that were very violently killed. A mystery killer. So we're a paranormal show. So probably the question on everybody's mind is, what about paranormal activity there? So pretty much they said that any phenomenon you could possibly have ever in any way, shape, or form has been recorded there in one, footsteps, yes.
I think that does it for this episode.
That's a wrap.
In the words of Chad, it's an episode.
It is.
Violent crime, and people are killed in tragic, horrific ways. There's usually a residual energy that's left. The spirits might not be able to comprehend what had happened to them. Their lives were taken suddenly. They feel like they have unfulfilled things that still need to be accomplished, so they might never crossed over. There's a lot of possible explanations. I know that Tim, you just said you just watched the episode of Ghost Adventures where they were out there at the house. The only thing I remember from that episode was that during the investigation they took out a Ouija board, which I can't stress enough. Ouija boards are bad because you're playing with a toy with a tool that's basically opening up a portal. You don't know who you're contacting. It could be the spirits that are living there. It could be something completely different, something malevolent that's pretending to be someone else. And I just can't stress it enough. Don't play with them. So it's always kind of unnerving to see these air quotations professionals using stuff like this to gain refutable evidence. And I don't know. What's your take on it, Tim?
On the house?
On what happened during Ghost Adventures, since it's more fresh in your mind.
The one thing I do remember is there was a pair of sisters that had their family owned the house and they grew up in it after the fact. They brought them to the house, and they talked about their experiences. and the stuff that they thought they saw or they felt. And the one sister, I don't remember their names, but I could tell she did not want to be in the house whatsoever. And the fear that I could feel coming from her, I mean, you don't have to be, gifted or anything like that. You can
just
you can
body
tell
language.
just the body language, just the way that she was. You can tell that fear that she had of being in that home was genuine, and just from that fact alone tells me that there is something there. Like whether it's the spirit of the man that committed the murders, or if it's something inhuman or demonic in nature, there's definitely something negative going on in that house.
Oh, absolutely.
There's whether or not they experienced the stuff that, to the extent that they said, I don't know, but I mean, to them it was real enough that she was afraid of being in this house. Like, she actually had to remove herself from the home and go to the neighbor's house just to calm down.
And that's usually one of the symptoms of people that are sensitive to that, is that when they walk into something that's negatively charged, they have feelings of queasiness and nausea wave over them. They have unsettling feelings. So I totally subscribe to that she was legitimate in her behavior and reacting to what was going on, that it was so upsetting that it kind of put her out of tune with the way that she normally feels, and you got to remove yourself from situations when you start to feel that way. We've been on investigations, and there have been people that have felt uneasiness and nausea, and that's the best advice, is just leave the site, gather yourself, get yourself together. So I think she responded in the best way possible.
Right. I know that they have the current sheriff of the town with them when they did their investigation. They actually locked themselves in, and the sheriff didn't seem to know that they were actually locked in the house, so they couldn't just go out running. But they did almost 2-hour-long EVP session, and they weren't really getting anything. If I remember correctly, there was something that happened towards the end. I can't remember what they heard, what the exact phrase was that they heard over the, I believe, the spirit box of the EVP session or whatever they were using at the time. Keep in mind, the sheriff is very skeptical, doesn't believe in the paranormal, but he definitely felt like he had heard something during their investigation. So, and I think I've seen news reports of people going in with their news cameras and whatnot, and seeing shadows and stuff going up the stairs, and yeah, it's just, in my opinion, I said, just going off of what Peaches said when she saw a picture of the home, just all the negative energy, the hatred, the fact that, I mean, she was able to tell that there was people murdered in the house. I believe she also said there was something, I don't remember if she said there was something there or not, but there is, other than supercharged negative emotions, even if there isn't a spirit in there, all that negativity can definitely affect somebody.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for $400, you can go and spend the night there too.
That would actually be a lot of fun, in my
I think
opinion.
so.
I know that a lot of people are like, "Oh, why would you do that?" But that's what we do, and I think it's good to enter it with a healthy amount of skepticism. But I think that you would find out pretty quickly that it is a legitimate haunting. That
Right.
there's definitely stuff going on. Like you said, a laundry list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have there's a bulletin board if you go there that people have left evidence, pictures of evidence, and you can find this picture online. And some of it's orbs, and I don't believe in orbs unless I see an orb in a video that's moving differently than the the dust and the
Yeah.
airflow. But some of the other evidence there, I was like, huh. Now you got to be careful though. If you go there, the locals for the most part don't buy into it. And I'm sure that there are some, but in general, kind of the general feel of the area is, yeah, whatever, it's haunted. And they said that sometimes if the kids know that there's someone spending the night, the kids will go and tap on the windows.
Yeah.
So, you have to kind of take some of those taps with a grain of salt, but that doesn't mean that other evidence can't be very convincing. You can get EVPs, you can get photos, you can get, things that you see with your own eyes. So if you do go, just know that the local kids will play a couple pranks on you, so don't get too excited about every knock and bang that you hear.
That's pretty good advice for all paranormal investigations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Healthy skepticism. Don't take everything with a grain of salt. That it's all paranormal. Try to find a logical explanation to it first. Try to debunk it, and try to find a rational reason behind what's going on. But if you can't, then
Yeah, because if it's paranormal, that's awesome. But you don't want to be one of those people that every time the
Every
wind
knock,
rustles,
every
it's a demon.
bump, yeah.
And that drives me nuts.
Well, in older homes, there's water hammering in pipes. You know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden and I've had that happen to me in an older home that I lived in at one point in time, and first time it happened, it was scary as hell.
houses settle at night when it's during the day. Wood beams and nails, they heat up and expand, and at night when it cools off, it contracts again, and there's natural. I mean, that's a natural thing with houses to have knocks and bumps in even modern houses.
Right. Well, and I think it was even our last podcast where we mentioned that we'd gone on a residential and there wasn't anything there. We were able to debunk everything because, I mean, and it was, it's this cute little lady, and, and I get her concerns. But sometimes the things that go bump in the night is not paranormal.
Well, especially in this situation where she lives alone, your mind can play tricks on you. I mean, even if you're not living alone, but I think you're more susceptible to just, no one else is in the house, so you don't have anyone else to verify that this is going on or anyone else to talk to about it. So you just kind of like, oh, the house, it creaked. There's no one here. I'm the only one here. So it must be paranormal.
Are you saying that someone currently resides in the home, like as a residence?
No,
this was the residential.
It's one of the residentials that we did.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say,
I believe
I missed that.
No,
sorry.
I believe the owners they do the tours. Like you can buy tickets to spend the night in the house.
Yeah, but I couldn't imagine someone actually wanting to live there.
I think the current owners, unless it's been changed, because the website I was looking at was created before 2012, because it was saying 97 years ago. So the website was created, but I believe at the time of that website's creation, the family that owned it had bought it in like 1994. I don't know if those people actually live in the house. I doubt it. I know that everything around the house, like a lot of the buildings have been torn down and the city's been rebuilt. That particular house has been put on the National Historical Registry, so it cannot be torn down.
And I think the house was actually moved from the original site too. I think it's moved in a new location. But I could imagine someone purchasing it for the value, knowing that they could be like a destination for people to do, which is what they're doing,
right?
Renting it out.
And the pictures that I saw online, it almost looks like you can rent it at night for ghost investigations, paranormal things. But to me, I got the impression that it's a museum, and you can just walk through. I could be wrong, but it just just the way it was set up, and it just looked museum-ish to me.
Now, the actual axe itself was left on premises. I don't know if it's at that location or at another location, but I do remember that somewhere in the area there is the actual axe to view. Like it's in a glass case.
Right, I've seen a picture of it, and they've left it partially cleaned off. And I don't know if they've just done that to add to it, or if
That's just insane.
or if it's left the way it was.
I could only imagine if there's something attached to it, or
There's gotta be.
the energy associated with that weapon that they used to kill all those people.
I think, if I remember correctly from the Ghost Adventure show, that there was a dude that had like a little museum type thing there in Viscella, that he had the axe in a glass case.
Yeah.
They weren't able to determine whether or not it was legit the actual axe,
Yes.
but he did have an axe. If I remember correctly, if I'm wrong, please feel free to let me know. But if I remember correctly from this Ghost Adventures episode, there was a guy that had like a little shop or something, and his claim was that he actually had the actual axe that was used.
That sounds right, that it wasn't actually on site, it was off site at a smaller little museum. Yeah. Dude, your dog loves me. He's like lying next to me and his eyes are rolling back.
Yeah, he's been pet. Yeah, so my little dog is quieter if we just let him come podcast with us. So he's just loving life right now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject.
Had
but
like an hour-long massage.
Yeah.
And he's just like.
I might have to take him home with me.
I'm fine with that.
Anyways,
But if any of y'all have been to the Ax Murder house or have any other information, I mean, there's a whole lot. If you go to, I believe it's VilliscaIowa.com, it's where I did a lot of my research. It was people that actually live in Villisca that put this website together. It talks about the town, the crime itself. It actually has pictures of the family, pictures of the suspects. It goes over a lot of the suspects and just kind of everything that went on. And then there's plenty of documentaries on YouTube as well, if you feel we didn't cover enough. But I mean, we covered pretty much everything.
Yep.
I hope so. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. If you have anything you'd like to add, we'd love to hear any kind of personal experiences, any anecdotes. If you've actually visited the site, love to hear about your thoughts and impressions. So, let us know. Give us a shout out sometime.
Alrighty.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.